Hey, g'day people, it's Matt here from Carve. So today we're going to have a look at eyes. I know I've looked at them before, but every time I kind of think there's got to be a better way of carving them, and maybe I left something out in the last video. So this video, I'm going to sort of like concentrate on that eye setup and then putting in the details. And with the eye setup, if you get that right, you're in a really good stead to put in the details of the eyes. Okay, so before we start, I just want to show you these couple of examples and what we can sort of see from them, kind of what you're aiming for before you kind of start. And we can see the eyes are sort of like flat on the face. Maybe they're kind of like curved back a little bit, but essentially they're sort of like in a plane like that, whereas the forehead sort of like curves down like that. So you can sort of see it meeting the outside of the eye. So you have the top part there and that goes down, that falls away, that sort of like has a nice sort of like curve in there. Okay, so when you're putting in the eyes, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to be carving the nose. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, but essentially I'm sort of carving in sort of like that, sort of there, that's the bridge. So I'll go back there and then I'll go towards that part there. I'll do a video on that at a later point. So I'll just bring up that nose to start with, and then we'll take it from there.
And I'm just going to fast forward this bit, but I'd like to remind you, if you could hit that like button, that would be awesome. And tell me about your problems with eyes in the comments. I'm always curious to know where the actual problem lies in carving those crazy little eyes.
Okay, so you can sort of see I've just marked in the eyebrows there, and I've got a kind of a little bit of a shape on the nose. What we're trying to do now is you can sort of see we're going to like want that flat plane down here. So we've still got to, maybe we need to take that bridge a little bit further back. But what we're going to start to do is maybe just sort of like put a little bit of a sort of undercut under that eyebrow there. Okay, so we've got those little undercuts under the eyebrows. So essentially what we're going to do, you could sort of like put where the centers of the eye that you kind of want. It's probably around about there. It's not too critical at this stage, but just be aware of things. So you kind of like want to put in where you're going to put the eyes, like that. So you don't really want to carve sort of like these centers away now. You might have to, like, after we've taken this back a little bit, sort of like even them out so they're flat and not sort of like shaped back like that, but we can do that as we go along. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get some depth sort of in that area there. So you can sort of see the eyes are sort of like sloping back like that. If I put the depth in with maybe this Burr, this is actually really hard wood. I thought it was going to be softer than what it is. So we're going to go for the depth there, then we can sort of make that mound a little bit flatter going like that. So you can sort of see it here on this one. So it wants to be like this.
So just work around the eye and sort of get that sort of like shape happening, and sort of try and get that eye to sort of flat, like I said before, that flat plane happening. You can sort of see there it's starting to occur there, but it's sort of like the eye is still rounded overall, but it's sitting on that flat plane. And it doesn't matter if the eye is too big at this stage, because we can sort of like make it smaller as we carry on.
So if we have a look at this, I've left this eye just so you can sort of see the comparison. So what we've got here is that kind of flat plane starting to develop on that eye. It kind of looks a little bit weird. The idea though is just to have sort of like a mound there, so you can sort of like put in the shape you kind of want of the eye, many kinds of shapes that you could put in. The idea is that you carve both eyes kind of at the same time. What I will do off camera is I will catch this side up with this side, and then I can show you the next step. Okay, so we've gotten these eyes to look pretty good. You can sort of see they're on that flat kind of plane, maybe sort of sloping out a little bit, but we can change that if we wanted to. And Just point out a couple of things, get something to point with. So that there is the only part we that there is the part where you want sort of like a concave happening, and then it goes out to a convex, sort of like that around the eye. Now, what we will do is the top of the eye, we want to put a line in. Now you can draw it in, it all depends on sort of like what you kind of want to do, or how you want to go about things. What you can do though to start off with is just make sure that both of them are pretty even, sort of one point's sharper than the other. Bring that in a tiny bit, kind of works out. So that, and you can sort of see there the width in between the nose should be the width of the eye, sort of round about there. So that's looking pretty good, and we can do the same on the other side. So at least we've got sort of like the eyes the same width across, and the bottoms look pretty good. Now what I tend to do is I will do the first line, and what I do is, you know, everyone carves eyes differently, so there's no right or wrong way to do things. You just got to find your own way. And I'm just showing you my way, and you can take from it what you want. So I will sort of like carve a line in like that to start off with, and then I will carve that line in, we'll sort of like go along there and then out like that. And then it all depends on how open you want your eye. So you could sort of like do quite an open eye, like that. It doesn't quite look right because this is still quite oval, but when we go along we tend to sort of like this, make this more round with these edges sort of like being sunken a little bit further back. So let's put that line in first, then that line.
Okay, so I'm using a T-shaped burr there, and the wood is reasonably quite hard. It is macrocarpa, which is a wood that I carve in quite often, but this piece is reasonably hard, so it was quite hard to get that line in. I skipped the next bit, and I didn't show you how I put the upper eyelid line in. But what we're doing here is we are using that cut saw fine taper burr, and we're just bringing the eye, the actual white of the eye, back a little bit, because the bottom eyelid has got to be further recessed back into the face, if you get what I mean. So the upper eyelid sticks out a little bit further than the bottom eyelid. So now I'm sort of putting the bottom eyelid, and I'm just using that pointed diamond burr to sort of like get in a few little details and sort of trying to round off the eye, so sort of making those corners sink back a little bit further into it. Cutter burrs, if you press them too hard, may burn in there, and we're just sort of like really sort of like doing the little details now. Now it depends on how much detail you want. You might be fine with that, and that's fine. Now you can sort of see the bottom eyelid is reasonably big, so what we can do is sort of like change the eyelid, make it a smaller eyelid, and put sort of like bags under the eyes. That's what I tend to do anyway. And what I'm doing here is just going over the upper eyelid and the bottom eyelid with diamond burrs to smooth them off, but also to sort of like match the contour of the internal white part of the eye. So sort of like making the eyelid sort of a little bit thinner all the way across. And it's just a matter of sort of like putting in sort of lines to sort of make it look like bags underneath the eyes, really. I use this one. This is my favorite cut saw burr here. And this little burr here is the Dremel wheel point burr. It is really nice to do these little fine details. It's a little bit smaller than 2 mm across, even though it says in the pamphlet that it is. So I really use this for sort of like putting in sort of final touches around the eyes. It's sort of, you can do a little bit of shaping with it as well. It all depends on how soft your wood is, what you can actually achieve with it.
Okay, so we can sort of see here the eye is taking shape, and we've got a good sort of like round part there and the eyelid underneath. What I was trying to do is trying to get, you want that eyelid sort of, this bottom eyelid sitting back from the top eyelid a little bit, so it's not at the same level. Needs to be back a little bit, and that makes it look a little bit better. And so we've kind of got it all sorted. I kind of probably need to make that sort of more like that, so it sort of comes up there. And with this, it kind of doesn't look quite right, because if you see on these ones, they all fall back. So essentially that's what I would do next, is I would make that all fall back.
But let's concentrate on the pupil of the eye now. Now I'm using that Dremel wheel point burr again, and I'm just using a real steady hand, and I am going around where I penciled in and where I think the eye pupil should go. I'm actually leaving the middle up, but you can also take it back, so you could sort of like just press that point into it if you wanted as well. I think I do that in the end anyway. So it's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna press there into the middle. So, and what the benefit of that is too, if you're using wax or paint, that would sort of like hold a dark blob of paint if you wanted to. And now I'm just sort of like tidying up little areas. I've sort of pretty much finished it. Like I'd work on the eyebrows and everything as well, but this video is really about the eye itself. But as you can sort of see, it's the setup of the eye that's really important, and how it sits on the face, and sort of all of those kind of things that sort of really make a really good eye in the end. Eyes are really, really tricky, so don't sort of like think you're going to do a really great job the first time you do it. If you want to add a little bit extra, you can do sort of undercuts underneath the eyelid. I just do real tiny undercuts. And the top of those T-shaped burrs are really good for sort of like flattening off that white pupil as well. And let me know in the comments the specific problems you have with eyes. And I can address them then. I tend to sort of like just make videos, and hopefully they are like worthwhile to you. I'm not quite sure. But if you have a specific problem, let me know in the comments, and I can sort of like try and sort something out for you. Sort of like maybe do a little video on just the upper eyelid, or maybe doing a more simple eye. That might work as well. So hey, thank you for watching, and happy carving, everybody.